Right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Paul Davis. I'm a curator of collections here at the Menil Collection. And I really want to thank you for joining us for this evening's program, the Artist Talk with Samuel Fosso, who will be joined in conversation with Dr. Mark Seeley, the director of a London-based photographic art institution, Autograph ABP, and a professor of photography, rights, and representation, and a core member of UAL's Photography and the Archive Research Center. So before we begin, please just take a quick moment to silence your cell phones if you haven't done that already. This program is being recorded and will be available on demand for on-demand viewing on the Menil's YouTube page in the upcoming weeks. Also, just a quick note that publications on Samuel Fosso's work and titles by Mark Seeley and some signed titles by Mark Seeley are available for purchase at the Menil bookstore just across the street. And it will be open this evening after the program for a very short period, so hustle on over there. So this evening's program has been organized in conjunction with the Menil's exhibition, Samuel Fosso African Spirits, which is on view through January 15th. It is presented as part of the ongoing 2022 FotoFest Biennial, African Cosmologies Redux. Fosso's African Spirits series consists of 14 large gelatin silver prints, in which the artist pictures himself as prominent figures from the 20th century Black liberation movement. Seeley originally selected this series of photographs to include in the 2020 FotoFest Biennial program, African Cosmologies, Photography, Time, and the Other. And I believe that there are some catalogs of that available as well through the FotoFest venues. Their conversation this evening will be in English and in French, with live interpretation provided by Odile Leger. The conversation will focus mainly on the series Mémoire d'une amie, an earlier body of work by the artist. Following the conclusion of their conversation, we'll open the floor for questions from the audience. So please do hold your questions until the end of the conversation. Major funding for the Menil's exhibition has been provided by the Eleanor and Frank Fried Foundation. Additional support comes from the Annie Levy Charitable Trust, Mark Walrow and Melanie Gray, and the City of Houston through Houston Art Alliance. I'd also like to thank my colleagues at FotoFest, Stephen Evans, the director, Max Fields, curator, and all the talented team at the FotoFest. I also extend the museum's gratitude to the Cockrell Family Fund for their generous support of the Menil's Artist Talk series this year. So with their permission, prearranged permission, I will dispense with an extended introductory and biographical remarks for the two esteemed guests that we have with us tonight, and conclude by saying how honored we are that Samuel and Mark have made this incredibly long journey from Central African Republic and from London, sometimes turning in space, to be here with us tonight. Knowledge is never complete, and two heads are always better than one. Please join me in welcoming Samuel Fosso and Mark Seeley.
Hold on a minute, I've done this a bit wrong. Just go back very quickly. Okay. Anyway, it is always a pleasure to be in Houston, and thanks once again to FotoFest for making this possible for me. It's been a long conversation with FotoFest, which spans back to about 1992, which is actually just about 2 years before I first met Sammy in Bamako. I just wanted to throw a few slides out there, really, just to kind of add a bit of context to Samuel's work in relation to the kind of political time that his thinking, and I suppose a lot of thinking, was going on in relation to the visualization of the black subject, ideas of liberation, how music impacted on ideas of freedom, how style was a kind of pathway to modernity, and how dancing was a form of liberation around the world, especially for those of us that were thinking about what freedom might look like in our very different kind of geopolitical kind of context. So this slide, for me, imprints Nico and his song about his mother is very pertinent for all kinds of reasons. And you can check this work out online, on Spotify or whichever medium you want to. I've been working with an organization in France called Revue Noire, some of you may well know, Simon Njami, Pascal Martin Saint-Léon, and others were very progressive and very active in the 90s, especially 1991. It was very rare for a magazine of this quality and this stature to be publishing and thinking about what contemporary African and diasporic African artists were doing and trying to add, if you like, a degree of intellectual and global understanding about the resonance and pertinence and relevance of what artists like Rotimi Fani-Kuri were doing and many others. It was a refreshingly well-invested project that was a forerunner to much of the kind of conversations that are happening today. And on that, on page 51, there was a very small announcement which caught my eye during this publication, and it was very simple, that there was going to be a big investment in contemporary African photography, not in Europe, not in North America, but in Bamako. And there was going to be this idea that we're going to unpack a kind of contemporary visual plane that had been historically ignored. And I was very keen to kind of investigate and follow what that was. And 2-3 years later, in 1994, the Biennale happened. It was an explosive event, which we don't have time to unpack tonight, but so much changed within the history of photography. And the dynamic, I think, in terms of understanding who was operating the camera and under what circumstances, meant that the likes of Seydou Keita, Malik Sedibé, and of course Samuel Fosso came to prominence. Things in terms of photography history have never been the same since that event. After that, I was working again very, very closely with colleagues in France, and the Bamako Biennale was a huge success. And Samuel and I met again in 2002, 2001, 2002. I was curating a Black British show. I'd spent a lot of time, as I talk about in the text, kind of inventing the idea of the Black British subject abroad, because locally there wasn't that much interest. So you find it's very easy as a political kind of strategy to have an audience outside of your local who often receive the work in a more kind of nuanced and more receptive way, because I would argue it doesn't threaten the local dynamic. People love to discover things. And there was a lot of language around artists like Samuel around discovery in that space. 1995, I'd also curated for Africa 95, a festival in the UK, a show which included Samuel's work at the Photographers Gallery as well. So we've been having these encounters. We've always been just crossing over, if you like, working together, but never necessarily being that close. There's always been a dialogue around the work. And I think that's really, really quite important. 2001, after seeing Samuel's work in this in Bamako again, I was very taken by, there was something shifted for me in the understanding of his work, something deeply personal above the kind of performative, outside of the studio, began to kind of, if you like, disturb my thinking about what he was doing with the camera and the things he was trying to say. We'll try and unpack some of these more nuanced bits when we talk to Samuel directly. But there was a certain sense that there was, a new vulnerability at play, a new sense of honesty at work. And for me, this work, the reason why I wanted to talk about Memory of a Friend, is that I think sometimes a piece of work and what it's trying to relay addresses, or is a key, if you like, to both some of the things that have gone on before and some of the things that will follow in the future. And I wanted to really address through this narrative, if you like, this very personal deep space that Samuel was trying to reveal, trying to bring the lens onto, throw light onto, to unpack, if you like, the political dynamic at play, which underpins a lot of what Samuel's work is about. So Samuel, I wanted maybe to begin to try and, if you could begin to try and tell us, maybe help us think through what this series was doing and the circumstances that were at play outside of the frame.
J'aimerais, Samuel, que vous commenciez à nous dire comment Mémoire d'un ami est venu, quel était l'environnement que vous connaissiez à ce moment-là.
La mémoire d'un ami m'est venue l'idée de le faire par rapport au conflit militaire qui a eu lieu en 1977, en 18. Donc,
the memory of a friend started during a military coup that happened in 1997?
97, 98.
98.
Alors donc, il y avait mon voisin sénégalais qui habitait à côté de mon studio.
And I had a neighbor from Senegal that lived right by my photo studio.
Alors les militaires sont venus à 2 heures du matin pour le faire voler.
So the military came to his place at 2 a.m.
Alors il a insisté de de le laisser voler ou prendre l'argent, et de là qu'on l'a battu.
And they wanted to rob him, and he said,
Pendant les faits, j'attendais le bruit qui criait. Et je me suis réveillé, comme j'habitais notre maison, ce n'est que le mur qui nous a séparés.
I was there, I was sleeping, but the noise woke me up. There was just one room over.
Et quand je me suis réveillé, j'entendais le bruit, mais je ne pouvais pas sortir les soutenir à cause que les gens ont des armes. Moi, j'ai la même vie, je ne peux pas.
And I kept listening to those noises as I woke up fully, but I couldn't get out. I knew they were armed, and so I couldn't go.
Et je me suis collé l'oreille à la porte pour voir. Pour mieux attendre ce qui se passe. Et c'est ça, je me suis collé les oreilles contre le mur, après avoir le peur, quoi.
So I got close to the side that was contiguous, and I was trying to listen, and I was very afraid.
Jusqu'au moment où j'ai entendu le coup de feu, c'est le moment qu'on l'a battu, il a crié, et puis il est tombé mort.
And I just then heard a shot, and he heard a last noise, and then he died.
Alors, j'ai essayé d'ouvrir la porte tout petit peu pour voir s'il n'y a plus de personnes dehors. C'est les armées qui sont venus le battre.
So
J'ai vu qu'il n'y a personne et je suis sorti de voir son corps.
I tried to open the door slightly to see if there was anybody outside, and there was nobody, so I could get out, and I saw his body.
Et quand je suis sorti, j'ai vu son corps à terre. J'ai crié, les autres voisins commencent à sortir là.
So when I saw his body on the ground, I screamed, and then the other neighbors came out.
Et c'est comme ça au moment, l'Afrique en création a financé des workshops de 4 parallèles de Centrafrique.
And that's how the work started. And there was
A workshop
a
in South
workshop
Africa.
in South Africa.
Et quand on était parti en groupe, je ne savais pas de quoi faire. Et l'idée m'est venue, je dis, parce que je n'ai pas aidé mon ami, il faut que je fasse ses mémoires. On commence à faire la photo.
So I didn't know really what to do, and suddenly I thought that I wasn't there to help my friend. Maybe I can do some work in his memory.
Et là, je me suis resté dans ma chambre, l'homme m'a attribué, et j'ai commencé à me faire filmer moi-même, comme habituellement je me filme moi-même.
And so I stayed in my room and I started taking pictures of myself, which is generally what I do.
Et pendant que je le faisais, mes collègues disaient, mais toi, on est venu pour travailler, mais tu es toujours dans la chambre pour dormir. Qu'est-ce que tu dirais les organisateurs?
And my colleagues were saying, well, we came here to work, and you spend your time in your room and sleeping. What will the organizers say?
Alors, c'est à la fin du travail et que j'ai présenté mes travaux que j'ai fait. N'ayant peur quand les gens ne peuvent pas accepter. Et j'ai montré, l'organisateur a dit, oui, mais c'est ce qu'il veut, c'est bon.
So at the end, I presented the work that I had done, and I wasn't sure whether it would be accepted, but the organizers said, yeah, that's what he wanted to do, we will accept it.
Et là, m'a posé la question, mais le titre de la photo, ça veut dire quoi? J'ai essayé d'expliquer, j'ai dit, mais le titre, c'est le mémoire d'un ami.
I tried to explain what it was, and I said the title is Memory of a Friend.
Et c'est ainsi que je pense que c'est l'origine de cette photo, ce que j'ai fait.
So that is the origin of this photo series.
So in many ways, there's a kind of within this work, there's a key, Samuel, to the methodology behind the thinking around the processes that you bring to the kind of politics of the work that you make. And I think, sorry.
Et en fait, ce que vous faites maintenant, là, ça a été la clé qui vous a donné une méthodologie pour tout le reste de votre travail.
En fait, oui, je pense que c'était ça.
Yes, indeed, it was the key.
And I think for me, there's a kind of, it's this undercurrent about the performative nature of the wider politic in terms of your work that I think this work signifies two things for me. There's a kind of beginning in terms of understanding the personal relationship to the things that will happen in the future. And then there's a kind of an ending, if you like, to a kind of understanding about the theatrical nature of how it is that we bring politics into the frame.
Je pense qu'il y a deux choses. Tout d'abord, au début, une situation personnelle que vous ressentez et qui débouche en fait ensuite sur une compréhension théâtrale et de la politique.
En fait, certainement oui.
I would say yes.
C'est parce que si je réfléchis en plan politique, quoi. Si je réfléchis le commencement de mon travail, c'est par rapport au début de ma vie personnelle. en commençant ce que j'ai senti pendant 1966 et 1967 et en 1970 par rapport à la guerre Biafra que j'ai souffert en enfance.
If I reflect about the beginning of my work, I would say yes, it is. It started with my life between 1967 and 1970.
Et là, c'est ma affaire personnelle.
And that is my personal life.
Concernant la politique, je pense que c'est la même chose. Parce que le conflit militaire, la guerre Biafra, c'est quand même la guerre politique. C'est la guerre civile qui a vraiment, qui n'était pas normale. Je ne dirais pas que c'est la guerre nigérienne, mais c'est la guerre entre Britanniques et Français à cause du pétrole.
And on the politics side, it's the same. It was a civil war, and so not a normal conflict, and that got me.
Après de ça, je suis arrivé en Centrafrique et la même chose se répète. C'est-à-dire la guerre civile et qui a coûté la destruction de ma maison. Et donc c'est ça, ça prend ça comme la politique parce que c'est toujours les politiciens qui causent tous ces problèmes.
And I moved in again. I encountered some civil wars. So really, politics. It's always the issue.
If we look across the arc of your work, including things like the series like African Spirits, would it be fair to say that they're kind of addressing a cultural and political crime scene?
Si l'on voit votre travail comme dans un arc général,
African Spirits.
est-ce que moi je crois que il y a en fait comme une scène de crime qui se répète.
I'll come. So that's part of the question, and then the second part of the question is that it's because a lot of the work is bringing very sensitive historical moments back into the present. So there's almost like this desire not to let go of those key, significant, politically, culturally, Afrocentric aspects of post-war, postmodern cultural dynamics that need to be remembered.
Et la deuxième partie de ma question, c'est d'après que votre travail revient sur ces choses-là. Et donc, que c'est le côté afro-centrique de votre travail.
Oui. Et je pense d'abord, mes travaux parlent de moi, et parlent de ce qui m'est arrivé, et ce que j'ai senti aussi.
Yes, I think it started with what happened to me and what I felt about it.
Quand j'ai fait African Spirits, je l'ai fait par rapport à la colonisation, c'est-à-dire toutes les souffrances que moi-même j'ai commencé depuis la naissance à la guerre Biafra et jusqu'à je ressens ça, une continuité d'une façon ou d'autre, l'esclavage.
When I did African Spirits, it was about the suffering from colonization, starting from when I was born through the war in Biafra and a continuation of suffering.
Et j'ai senti que je m'irais, comme toute moi et tous les Noirs aussi, soit américains, soit africains, soit asiatiques. Et tous les Noirs globaux dans le globe mondial soient libres.
And I felt that I would like that me and all black people, whether in the US, in Africa, or anywhere else, would be free.
Alors, j'ai choisi d'abord à faire African Spirit en choisissant ceux qui ont laissé leur vie à cause des Noirs et ceux qui luttaient pour le droit civique et l'indépendance d'Afrique.
So with African Spirits, I chose to make portraits about the people that had fought this cause and for freedom.
But they're more than photographs, aren't they? The reason why this work is so central for me in terms of the proposition around the idea of African cosmologies is because they're more than photographs. There's a certain sense of embodiment of that space, and I think that there's a dynamic within Samuel's work where there's a kind of takeover moment in terms of the spirit of the person. So if we could maybe talk about that takeover spiritual moment in the creation of the subject, both through pleasure and the pain and the memory and the history, in the making process, I think that would be interesting to maybe hear a little bit more about the embodied space.
C'est plus que des photos, c'est vraiment vous incarner tout ce que vous ressentez, et que ce soit le plaisir, la souffrance, c'est votre travail.
Oui. J'incarne mes sujets par rapport à mon esprit inconsciemment, mes esprits que je ne connais pas au fond.
I do embody my subjects, and it's something, it's inside my spirit, and I'm not fully conscious of it.
Ma vie, personnellement, je ne le connais pas normalement. Ça reste mon corps, je ne me connais pas.
My own life, actually, I don't know. I don't know nothing about it.
Mais quand je vais incarner une personne, et ça me prend le temps de l'étudier, et je le pose, et quand je vais me poser, mes esprits n'est plus là. Je me sens plus en tant qu'un corps vivant. Mais je ne sais pas quand je rentre chez le corps que j'incarne. Et à partir de ça, et quand je me sens plus moi-même, et je chute. Et quand je me chute, je me reprends mes esprits. Et quand je reprends mes esprits, c'est comme si je me réveille dans le sommeil.
When I embody a person, I first have to study it, and then when I'm ready to pose, it's like my spirit is not there. I embody totally, and that's when I can make the shooting, and then I come back to my own body.
So you're released eventually from the subject.
Donc vous êtes libéré à un certain moment du sujet.
Effectivement, quand je sors, je me suis libéré moi-même et je laisse l'objet, c'est-à-dire l'objet que j'ai incarné, ou qui m'incarne aussi, parce que c'est la même chose, c'est donnant. Alors, je me libérais. Quand je me livre, je resterai libre, et je regarde au projet entre moi et lui, et je regarde aussi l'origine, et si c'est compatible, alors je sais que j'ai reçu mon projet.
So when I finish, I see myself as liberated from the object, but in a sense, the object has embodied me the same way I did embody that object. And once it's done, I see myself as liberated.
So back to memory of a friend. There are some, I think, I'm reading right, there are some questions for me underlying this, which are about representations of the black body in photography. We can talk about this.
Non, il y a une question qui est la représentation d'un corps noir nu en photographie.
I'll carry on if I can,
Et je vais
just in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why it's historically within the history of photography, the black body has been so exoticized.
Parce que dans l'histoire de la photographie, le corps noir a été exorcisé.
It's almost become impossible to use the black body or to disrupt that narrative as soon as it becomes a naked form that's framed in photography.
Parce qu'il fait qu'il est pratiquement impossible d'utiliser un corps noir en photographie.
And my concern when I first saw Memory of a Friend,
et ma préoccupation lorsque j'ai vu pour la première fois la série Mémoire d'un ami,
is that cultural charge on the work, specifically a kind of European gaze into the work,
c'est que la charge culturelle qu'il y avait dans ce travail, cette charge européenne,
would overshadow the kind of traumatic aspects of the political things that were happening outside of the frame.
dominer le côté traumatique qui existait dans le cadre.
Oui. Il y a une chose qui est très particulière sur moi.
There is something very special about me.
Auparavant, on a découvert l'autoportrait. On m'a découvert le premier photographe autoportraitiste.
I was discovered twice. The first time as a self-portraiteur.
Et quand j'incarne une personne, ou bien je regarde, je parle à une personne, quand vous avez vu la différente série des African Spirits, et je porte ce qu'ils portaient, tout ce qu'ils portaient. Donc, c'est ma façon d'incarner aussi une personne, de rencontrer son histoire, et puis comment il s'habillait, comment il se comporte.
And when I embody a person, like in all the African spirits, it's my way of telling their life to have the same clothes that they had.
Bien sûr, en Afrique, en particulier en Afrique noire, il est impossible de faire la photo nue.
And of course, in Africa, and especially in Black Africa, it's almost impossible to do nude pictures.
Je me rappelle, au moment d'Empereur Bokassa en Centrafrique, il était interdit de faire la photo nue parce que on le fait, il dit c'est les Blancs vont acheter pour se moquer de nous.
I remember that it was forbidden to make pictures of nude bodies because the fear that they would be mocking the person.
À ce temps, moi, je faisais, on peut voir ma photo dans l'année 70. Je portais maillot de bain, et puis je faisais avant. Pourquoi? Parce que je sais, on a dit de ne pas faire une personne en nu, mais on n'a pas dit de ne pas se faire photo en nu. Donc, je suis propriétaire de mon propre corps.
So before I always had at least a swimsuit or something, and after that I thought that, well, we are not allowed to make portraits of other people nude, but my body is my own and I can do it for myself.
Alors, quand il s'agissait de mémoire d'un ami, et je me suis fait exactement, parce que j'étais au lit, l'affaire était commencée. Bien sûr, je dors chez moi, et puis je dors tout nu parce qu'il fait chaud. Je dors toujours tout nu. Et quand je me suis réveillé, et quand j'ai entendu le bruit, je me suis réveillé en nu.
And in this case of memory of a friend, I was in bed, it's hot, so I don't have any clothes when I sleep, and I just woke up when it happened.
Donc tout ce que je ressentais, je faisais le mouvement, et je l'avais enregistré aussi quand je voulais faire la mémoire d'un ami. Donc je voulais reproduire les choses exactement comme ça était passé.
So my idea in Memories of a Friend was to do the movements and everything as it had happened.
Si j'avais porté des habits ou bien de faire ça ne va pas résonner exactement ce que j'ai senti et ce que j'ai vu pendant l'assassinat de mon ami. Donc je devrais être comme j'étais, et c'est comme ça que je prends mon art exact. Je veux dire les choses comme qu'elles se présentent.
If I had clothes on, it wouldn't be what I felt and what I saw, and what I wanted to convey is what I really had felt then, and that's how it was.
Sinon, ça n'a pas de sens de se poser entre des poteaux à l'habit, au costume, en tout. Moi, je me incarne, je raconte l'histoire comme elle se présente, comme on dit, réalité, que ça soit réel. Je ne peux pas porter, c'est parce que la nuit était bannie en Afrique, mais ce n'est pas banni, mais c'est tabou. Comme les Français disent, les Noirs, être nu en Afrique, c'est tabou. Mais bien sûr, mais je l'ai fait. Ça dépend. Ceux qui veulent prendre, qu'ils prennent. Ceux qui ne veulent pas, c'est pas obligatoire. C'est l'histoire de moi.
So to have a sense in this embodiment, I need to show how it happened, how it was, the real story. And in Africa, it was taboo to do that, but nobody is forced to do it. But I wanted to convey the real
La
real story.
utilité n'est pas fantaisie, c'est l'art, l'histoire de la photographie.
Okay, I'm going to
It
stay.
was the real story.
It's an incredible story and an incredibly tragic story, and it's great that we can mark that story through this work. And I think memory and memorials and remembering have never been so historically kind of charged as they are in this present.
Je pense que la mémoire et le cas de mémoire de mon ami, ça n'a jamais été aussi chargé de sens que maintenant.
Au fait, parce que
Wait, because I'm going to give you some more. These subjects that you embody,
Les sujets que vous incarnez,
that you become,
et vous devenez eux,
so you return them as radical ghosts.
et donc en fait vous les retournez à un état d'esprit.
And what do you want them to say, or what do you think they would say in our present?
Et qu'est-ce que vous pensez qu'ils vont
Any of your African spirits?
l'un quelconque de ces esprits africains, qu'est-ce qu'il dirait maintenant de votre œuvre?
D'accord. Pour moi, l'esprit africain, comme je dis, African Spirit,
For me, African spirit is
c'est l'idée africaine, la culture africaine.
it is the culture. It is the African culture.
Et en nous laissant que nous sommes des riens, nous sommes des hommes moyens qui ne connaissent même pas leur histoire. Alors, j'ai posé la question, cet esprit africain et qui cherchait à libérer l'Afrique, à libérer l'esclavage, à nous faire d'égalité, ce qu'on cherchait, est-ce que ce n'était pas le bon esprit?
And my question is, this fight was to try and liberate from slavery and get equality.
Alors, vous voyez, par exemple, le premier sujet qui m'a tiré au cœur, j'ai commencé par l'African Spirit, c'est Martin Luther King.
So my first subject in this African Spirits series was Martin Luther King.
Nous disait qu'il a, j'ai rêvé, un jour, le blanc et le noir marcheront ensemble. Un jour, le blanc et le noir prendront même bus ensemble et faire tout ensemble. C'est l'esprit africain, il cherche l'égalité. Et maintenant, je pense que son rêve vient de réaliser. Et c'est un bon esprit. Donc, en général, l'esprit africain, pour moi, c'est qu'ils ont hérité le droit civique et qu'ils cherchaient le droit des Noirs. Et ceux qui cherchaient aussi la liberté en Afrique, qu'on appelle l'indépendance pour qu'on soit libre. Donc, tout ça là, pour moi, c'est l'esprit africain, donc l'African Spirit.
So Martin Luther King had a dream that white and black people would walk together one day. They would take the same bus one day. They would do everything together one day. And that is the African spirit. And that's how we get to independence and equality. That is the African spirit.
And then one last scenario. There's the word justice always comes to mind when I'm thinking of your work. There's the work in China. There's the work around, of course, liberation struggles. Then there's the personal work. And I'm wondering whether there's this underlying kind of, banner across everything that we've done in the last, 30 years? That really, both on a personal and a political line, does call to a kind of sense of justice or calls out injustice.
When I think about your work...
in French?
In French.
Sorry.
That was good, though.
C'est pas grave. Ça arrive.
Excuse me.
Lorsque je pense à votre travail, je pense à l'idée de justice.
Question of justice.
Que ce soit donc au niveau de la libération des peuples, que ce soit dans votre travail personnel et depuis 30 ans, donc personnel et politique. Et c'est donc un sentiment, c'est ça, de recherche de justice ou d'abolition de l'injustice.
So it's only because I'm very interested in the work the photographs are doing now. I don't want them to be, for me, I don't want them to be located as kind of memories of activism. I need to feel as though that they're conversations around what we need to be thinking about in this present.
Et ça, c'est parce que pour moi, je pense qu'il ne faut pas qu'on relègue ça dans des choses passées, mais qu'on puisse ressentir encore maintenant cela.
Non. Il y a, quand faisais mes photos, quand on ne parle pas des choses passées, il y a des photos comme des photos que j'ai fait moi-même, ça a été acheté, j'écrivais au-dessus.
I had pictures that I did and that I sold, and I wrote something on them.
L'une de ces photos, j'ai écrit « Il n'y a pas le présent sans passé ».
In one, I said, there is no present without past.
Parce qu'il vient de me dire de ne pas parler parce que si on n'a pas parlé parce qu'on ne serait pas là aujourd'hui.
There was no past. We wouldn't be here today.
Well, I have this theory about time.
Donc, moi, je ne peux pas oublier.
I have a theory about time, is that I refuse this idea of kind of colonial time, because this is the whole premise of I refuse time as a colonial narrative.
Yeah. Il y a une question qu'il a posée. C'était quoi avant de dire ça? C'est sur. Qu'est-ce qu'il posait la question avant, la première avant de dire.
What was your question before that?
The first question.
The question was the underpinning narrative across all the series is maybe this quest for justice.
Okay.
You see, what I was trying to say is that I worry that when we talk about the past, it's as if it's resolved. So when I think about Angela Davis, I think about the present, because the work that she was doing in the past is still incredibly relevant in the present. So what that does for my thinking is that it undoes the past and relinks it to the present. So I deny the present because that present is not resolved.
La question, je parlais de justice et de votre travail, mais en fait, si on pense que quelque chose est passé, on pense que c'est réglé, que c'est résolu. Or, par exemple, le travail d'Angela Davis, il est encore présent. C'est quelque chose qui
So I like this. One more. I like this idea. I like this idea of the African spirit calls those ancestral moments in a real kind of Western dynamic to remind us that the cost of that past is often a tragic undermining.
Le problème qui m'a poussé de revenir en arrière l'histoire passée, c'est ce que après tout ça là, il n'y a jamais de manuel scolaire qui parlait à propos d'esclavage. Peut-être c'est le savant. Il n'a jamais parlé de ça, donné des détails. Et c'est ça qui m'a poussé de le faire, d'abord pour ne pas aller loin. Et rapport, je vais vous dire. Continuez.
About the African spirits, in what pushed me into doing it is that the books in school don't talk too much about slavery.
Et puis, regardez la génération peut-être à partir de ma génération. La plupart ne connaissent pas normalement l'histoire des souffrances que les Noirs ont souffert, soit l'esclavage aux États-Unis, soit en Afrique. On a porté ça. Donc pour mon idée, c'est de faire ça, parce que ce n'est pas enseigné à l'école, et je le fais pour que ça rentre au musée. Et comme ça, ça va aider les nouvelles générations noires à apprendre l'histoire, ce qui s'est passé à ses ancêtres.
Je
peux répéter.
Yeah. Just. I think often, starting from the generation, my generation, and the youngest generations, there is they don't know about the sufferings of blacks, whether in the US or Africa. And my idea in doing this and have African spirits get into a museum that can help to have people remember what happened to black people.
Okay. I agree, that's fine.
You're welcome.
We can, I'm just going to throw this out because it's relevant as well. I mean, the very idea of a museum as a place of memory and what gets remembered and valued in those spaces is again a highly contested, current and relevant political untangling process. If not the museum, then what is a big question as well. But I'm very mindful of time, even though I reject it, unless I'm flying BA. Then I think it's possible. It's possible to maybe share some questions from the floor. I think so.
And I have a mic here, so if you just raise your hand, I'll bring it around.
Don't be shy. There's one there.
Am I allowed to ask my question in French?
I think so.
Alors, ma question concerne votre série African Spirits et le choix des personnages que vous avez représentés. J'ai notamment remarqué que vous aviez représenté l'empereur éthiopien Haïlé Sélassié, et qui n'est pas considéré par tous les Éthiopiens comme un personnage très positif. Certains le considèrent comme un dictateur, un autocrate. Donc je me demandais, comme vous avez vous-même connu la dictature, vous avez connu Bokassa, vous en avez parlé, qu'est-ce qui a motivé ce choix d'inclure Haïlé Sélassié dans cette galerie de portraits? Merci.
Et c'est une bonne question.
My question is that I saw African Spirits, and I saw that you chose as one person the Ethiopian, which I consider a dictator, Abile, and I know that you have lived under Bokassa, so you know, and for me it's the same thing. So why your choice of this person?
Alors, Haïlé Sélassié, c'est un panafricain. Il y a une raison d'abord, je mets Haïlé Sélassié, la tête en Afrique. Savoir une africaine, ça commence à l'Éthiopie. Savoir, c'est un pays qui n'a pas colonisé et qui a vaincu les Italiens qui voulaient coloniser ce pays. Et rien n'est toujours parfait chez soi. Mais en Afrique en général, on les considère comme des pères. Pères panafricains et qui réunissent, bien sûr, mais s'il n'est pas parfait en Éthiopie, mais il est parfait en Afrique. Demandez-moi, on va dire sur Kadhafi, on disait il n'est pas bien, mais le jour qu'on l'a tué, là on a commencé à connaître, c'est lui qui faisait l'unification. Donc, pour moi, Haïlé Sélassié était quelqu'un qui a participé, surtout en Afrique, pour libérer aussi l'Afrique. Même s'il n'est pas Éthiopie, c'est l'Afrique.
For me, Haïlé Sélassié was he fought the Italians and he fought colonization. Often things are not perfect inside the country, but in Africa he's considered as the father of Pan-Africanism, and that's why I chose him.
Wendy.
Je vais le dire en anglais. So my question is, why among all the people of power that you're representing, particularly of the Africans, have you included Seydou Keïta as a photographer and an artist?
Bien sûr, Seydou Keïta, il est comme pantin. Il est aussi le libérateur, partie des libérateurs de photos africaines. Et puisque Keïta a été le premier photographe qu'on a découvert, occidental, qui a fait tout ça aujourd'hui aussi. Et il y a eu l'organisation panafricaine photographe de Mali. Et grâce à sa découverte par les occidentaux qui vont organiser la première rencontre de la photographie africaine. Mais ce qui m'a touché, c'est ce que je l'ai vu. Une semaine, en 2002, là, je l'ai rencontré, j'étais chez elle, c'est lui, et puis rentré. Même pas d'un mois, m'a dit qu'il est mort. Donc, j'ai choisi de le mettre dans cette affaire. Il représente pour moi le père de la photographie africaine. C'est pour cela que je l'ai mis.
He is, in my mind, the father of African photography. He was the first one, and I met him in Mali at the Bamako exhibit when he came in 2002. And that's why I chose to include him.
It's a nice inclusion. There must be probably two more questions. You're a silent, polite Houstonian audience. Go on.
Thank you for sharing this body of work that's not perhaps as well known, or at least to me. It's very autobiographical, whereas most of the other projects that we know are not. And yet, you've been through so much. How come there isn't more autobiographical stories of your childhood and things that you've faced in your life?
Good question, thank you.
Yeah. Mes travaux, je fais le plus important, j'ai beaucoup de séries. Alors, comme j'ai vécu le paralysme naturel, j'étais guéri par mon grand-père et je n'ai pas manqué de le faire. J'ai fait aussi le rêve de mon grand-père. Et c'est aussi ce qui me concerne parce que j'étais paralysé en tout. Mais ce soir, et puis fin de fin, je suis arrivé à être aujourd'hui avec vous grâce à mon grand-père. Et qui voulait même que je sois l'héritier des soins, mais malheureusement, après qu'on était revenu à la guerre du Biafra, on se rendit, il était mort. Donc, j'ai fait le mémoire, le rêve de mon grand-père. Donc, je ne sais pas, tout est là. Et tout ce qui a passé sur moi, je l'ai fait. Même jusqu'à 666, ce qui parle du chiffre du diable, et qui vient d'être fait par rapport à ce qui m'est arrivé en 2014 en Centrafrique. J'ai fait beaucoup d'histoires. Tout ce qui m'arrive dans ce monde, je pense que j'ai fini. Et c'est arrêté en 2014. Donc là, je suis arrivé à même ça depuis l'histoire de mon enfant jusqu'aujourd'hui. Je n'ai pas manqué.
I did carry all those stories from the beginning up to 2014. I did, for instance, do the series of the dream of my grandfather, and I embodied him, and I feel my heritage. And I did also Satan, and a number. I feel that I have represented everything.
Okay. I think it's a good question because one of the things we were talking about earlier is the idea of the mask behind all of this, behind all of these various stagings. There's a kind of cultural mask that gets hidden and then performed with. There's a longer conversation about Igbo culture and other ways of being and embodiment, which we probably don't have time to unpack now. That's another another chapter, another conversation. But I think that idea of the autobiographical, the signature, is evident, but I think sometimes you just have to peel a little bit further back. I wanted to present the memories of a friend because it's obviously autobiographical, not so well known, but I think, as I said, it kind of turns the key in both directions of what I feel Samuel's work is addressing, which is a kind of, critically, I think, is that place when you're caught between, witness and an activist, and how the difficult decisions that you make in that moment can impact and affect the rest of your life. And I think sometimes the reason why I personally like photography, because it sometimes seems most suited for that type of conversation. So I think, unless someone's got a... Where are we? There we go. Well done.
Any thoughts of what's going on in the United States, specifically with young black men in the United States, and any insights how you might have for us U.S. Americans, how we can do better in the United States with regard to embracing our young black men?
Say the last bit again. What was the last bit?
Sir?
What did you say? What did you say at the end? Sorry.
Towards young black men.
Avec les Noirs américains, les jeunes. Ok. Je ne manque jamais à rencontrer, à les rencontrer. Je viens de rencontrer certains. Tu sais, j'adore ma couleur.
When I meet some black people, but I meet.
Your mic is gone.
Yeah, it looks like, yeah, it's
That's
better.
Yeah.
Let me see. When I meet some black people, for me, I love to meet them. I like the black color, I like my color.
Vous savez que je dis à mes frères noirs, nous avons tout, power, pouvoir en tout, la musique, nous avons la musique. Nous avons la force. Tous les sports, c'est toujours nous. Donc Dieu n'a jamais nous abandonné. Soit le basket, soit le football, c'est toujours les Noirs qui sont meilleurs. Donc inutile de se décourager. Continuez à lutter. Dieu est toujours avec nous. Et c'est pour cela qu'on a toujours en force en soi. Nous sommes tous... Je peux pas beaucoup raconter l'histoire, mais le premier boxeur aussi, c'est black.
We have the power, we have the music, we have the strength. We are the best at all sports, whether basketball or any of them, it seems. So we need to continue the fight.
And just to add a little bit, I think it's a shame that we have to continue the fight. I'm pretty, on a personal level, very disappointed that after 30 years of looking around ideas of race, rights and representation, that the conversation seems to be increasingly more siloed and increasingly more difficult for people to simply understand that we all have to do a lot better if we're going to survive in this world. Mm-hmm. On that note, I think... before we get too dark, we could have another hour, which that question would unpack. But it's fantastic to have Samuel's work here again. It's great that there's a redo for the African Cosmologies Biennial. The pandemic wiped it out. It's great to hear people laugh in the room and share these ideas together. Samuel's work is a conversation. It's an ongoing conversation. It's one artist trying to tackle some hugely difficult and complex personal histories. They're not black histories, they're our histories. And I would just like to personally thank Samuel for the journey that he's been to, and thank God for his grandfather and his healing capacities to enable you to be with us today. So thank you, Samuel.
Thank you.